Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy, and I'm delighted to have Beth with me today. And Beth is going to share her experiences navigating the 17 caregiving systems. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks for being here. So let's start off with just a real quick overview of your caregiving experience.
Okay. So I'm a caregiver predominantly, firstly, for my husband, who um, had end-stage lung failure, so an increasingly serious chronic illness over years until he managed to get a lung transplant. So then we navigated like an end-stage disease, a transplant, and then post-transplant, there are a lot of things to cope with. And then he was in a Vespa accident. He was knocked off his Vespa one afternoon. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And then since then, that time also, my parents are getting older and we lived on opposite ends of the country and they were increasingly unable to cope. And so in the summer of 2020, they moved, so we helped them sell up from across the country and move in. So now we're all together and I'm caregiver for 3 people.
Okay, so tell us a couple situations, one or two, where you've had to navigate multiple caregiving systems within one situation.
Right. Well, I think anytime you're doing anything, you end up with multiple systems. So even in the last week, for example, we've had mask mandates lifted in healthcare situations. So that puts an added burden on patients and caregivers or care partners to navigate things more safely. So my mom has blood draws and physician's appointments she needs to get to. Same with Tony, he gets monthly blood draws. He's coming up on his annual assessment for his transplant, so that requires him to take his mask off inside the hospital to do spirometry testing. And so there's all kinds of phone calls and extra things that we've been navigating just so that we don't walk into any situation without knowing what the safety parameters are or aren't, and trying to get in touch with everybody. And yeah, so managing not just healthcare, but some of those safety things. And then when I phone to find out what protections you're still having in place, it's airborne. So what sort of airborne protections do you have and what does your air filtration look like? Of course, the medical office assistant has no idea, right? So then you're looking at trying to figure out who's in charge of the building. And yeah, so there's lots of systems there. And I mean, if you want to then look at family situations of, my mom is worried. Tony, not so much, but my mom is worried what happens if I miss getting my blood work done and the doctor cancels the appointment. I need to go and see him, right? So yeah, helping smooth that over.
So it's interesting because it's nervous system, but it's not just your mom's nervous system, but it's your nervous system managing your mom's nervous system.
That's right.
And it's not just the medical system, but it's the community system because there's a building within the community that you're trying to figure out.
Right.
How do they keep us safe?
Yeah.
So it's multiple systems for one reason.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us one more example of managing multiple systems.
Okay. Do you want me to do the one that I've got the picture for?
Sure.
Because that's a much longer story.
How about how about if you pick one part of that story?
Okay. Let's see. I guess in the hospital part would be part of the story. So I had mentioned earlier that Tony was in a Vespa accident. So just to sort of fast track through the beginning part. So we live in Victoria, and so the accident happened here. He got to the hospital. because he's a transplant recipient and the clinic is and the surgeries and follow-up happen in Vancouver, um, he was moved to Vancouver because the lung transplant program, anytime any of their patients are hospitalized, they're moved. Um, so he's moved to Vancouver and he crosses a boundary. So he crosses from the health authority that we live in to the Vancouver Health Authority, and he's in the hospital. So I guess you think, oh, I get to the hospital and everything's going to be fine and safe, and I can stand down because I'm the family caregiver. But that's not always the case. So they missed a diagnosis. They missed that he had a perforated bowel. He became septic. They missed the initial stages of sepsis. And so he had to go for emergency surgery. During that surgery, he aspirated into his transplanted lungs and he ended up on life support. And because it was a perforated bowel, he lost part of his intestinal tract, bowel, colon, whichever section. And so, yeah, so that was not good. So he's in ICU. I guess I can focus on that part. And then what happens is we live in British Columbia. As I had said, we moved my parents across the country. So I don't live near to my parents. Tony's from England. We met each other and were married in Saskatchewan, which is kind of halfway through the country. He has adult sons. I have adult stepsons who are still in Saskatchewan. So now people are coming to Vancouver because Tony's so ill, right? So families coming. His sister lives in England. She and her husband were on a skiing holiday or a holiday of some sort at the time. It was April. So they cut their vacation short, got her back to England so she could repack and get here, families coming in. I'm beside myself, right? Like part of this pathway that I'd put out was that we arrived at the hospital with our previous baggage. So our previous baggage included the transplant. We moved after the transplant because we lived rurally and you need follow-up care. So we'd sold up. In the process, we lost our house because the bank said we could port our mortgage and then we couldn't. So we have this massive pile of baggage that we come to the hospital with. And before the family even arrives, I mean, there's other things too. All of this happens like everything seems fine. He's got some broken bones. There was nothing major except the perforated bowel. And so he goes for surgery first thing in the morning. I arrive, he's almost into surgery. So I managed to see him. They wheel him off. He's gone into surgery. It's only 1 or 2 minutes to me. It's not that long. I go back up to the floor to see about his things in his room. And in that short time, they had packed everything he owned and had in that room where he'd been for 3 or 4 days already into big garbagey type bags, cleared the room out, sanitized it for the next person. And that's one of the things that I still have flashbacks of is just the feeling I had when I walked into that room. And it was like they erased him. And at that point, he hadn't even, like I didn't even know. This wasn't the worst part. He hadn't done the aspiration and ended up on life support yet. This was just the emergency surgery part. So I'm not doing all that great. And I'm not the patient, right? So when you're the caregiver, nobody stops to ask you how you're doing. They don't send a counselor. They don't send the therapy dog. They don't. You're just there to pick up his belongings and off you go, right? So, yeah. So there's lots of even systems there without me having to manage the medical system. But there were parts of our story where, as the caregiver standing there, I jumped in with questions and asked why aren't certain things being done? And then within 10, 15 minutes, those things were done and his condition improved. So Yeah, you're managing an awful lot, including your own self, right? Like I have
Yes.
on this part, there's a part where I was just so upset and I had written on the diagram, ugly crying in stairwell.
Yeah.
The
Right.
patient, the patient
Yeah.
waiting room on that floor
Mm.
had people in it, so I was really upset and thought I'll just sit in the stairwell. And when I first got there was nobody, but I'm just ugly crying in the stairwell, and easily tens of people walked past me and ignored me.
Oh,
One person stopped and said, "You need to talk to the charge nurse." After I just managed to sputter out, "They're going to kill him." Um,
oh,
like this is par for the course, right? This is the baggage that families and care partners and the patients themselves come into the healthcare system with. It's like that aspect of us isn't seen or helped or supported. So the longer you're involved with this system, the heavier that baggage becomes.
so I was jotting down the systems
Yeah,
and I jotted down 7: family,
yeah,
money,
yeah,
medical, oh, relationship.
yeah.
Actually, I thought of the 8th, legal, because there's an accident. Anytime there's an accident, there is some kind of legal implications.
Oh, we have a lawyer.
Yeah, right. And then community, because it happened in the community.
Right,
But you actually, it happens in one community, you go to another community, so that's part of what impacts.
right,
And then certainly nervous system,
for
and then
sure.
there's payer. Now you're in Canada, so your payer system is a little different, but you're still in a payer system.
Right,
Oh,
right.
and provider. Okay, so that's 9.
Yeah.
So provider.
And the payer, it's even in Canada, because this was a car accident, that now we have another agency involved, which is why we have the lawyer involved. The lawyer's not here for any medical harm or anything. The lawyer is involved as a personal injury lawyer because there's an insurance issue with our provincially funded insurance. Like that was the one piece of good advice in the emergency room here. A social worker pulled me aside, even in all the blathering in the corner, and said, "This is an insurance. Your provincial insurance is involved. Phone a lawyer right now." Um, and so I just Googled and got the one with the best IT SEO person who came up
Yeah,
first,
right,
who's been
right.
excellent, right? Um, and dealing with that lawyer, he does um, these personal injury things all the time, and he's been doing this for tens of years, and he has his own network. So there have been times where he's been the key point for navigating the system and helping us pull in experts to do diagnoses that people within the health system, because it's so siloed, either don't know about or whatever reason haven't recommended to us. So this has been a massive, massive learning exercise for us in all of these systems, right?
So you know what? I added 3 more as you were talking. Spiritual, social, and workplace. And spiritual because you're faced with death. You cannot help but have some spiritual experience, regardless of your faith.
Right.
There's a spiritual experience here. And I think of social because I was trying to think of what's the system that happens when you're in the stairwell and people walk past you. That's a social setting where you are, I want to say, intentionally overlooked or intentionally averted because people don't know how to socialize with you or what to do socially with you.
Right.
What do
Right.
we do? She's despondent. What do we do? Right. So we're just going to walk by.
Right. Because they know they have nothing to offer, right?
Oh,
One
geez.
person stopped, a physician
Oh,
stopped, um, and yeah, she spoke to me. Um, but I think that's another massive problem we've got is the people in the system. It's not that they're not caring, but they know they don't have help to provide to you.
right. So they feel terrible, right?
That's
Powerless.
right.
I am helpless. If I stop and help this woman, I actually won't be able to help her because there's
Right.
nothing that can help her.
Right.
So I'm
And
just
once
gonna
I
keep going.
stop, it's gonna take me
Right, I
it
don't
could
have
be
the time.
hours, right?
She's crying, she's crying, she's despondent. This is gonna take time and I've got an appointment.
Exactly,
I've got a treatment. I've got something. I've got a
exactly,
schedule I have to keep.
exactly. She's not only is she not the patient, as caregivers aren't the patient, she's not my patient,
Right,
right?
yes,
So
she's not my
there's
patient.
nothing they can do,
Right,
and it's gonna interfere with wherever they're off to and whatever
right,
task they're expected to be off
right,
and
because I
doing.
have to get to my patient.
Yeah,
Or my paperwork or whatever it is.
right,
And then the other one was workplace, because the
yeah,
hospital now becomes your workplace.
yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
doing the work of advocating, managing, navigating.
yeah, yeah. When I'm not my best, right?
Oh, of
Like,
course
oh,
not, right,
like my
yes,
prefrontal cortex is shot. Like
right.
I even
Oh,
got on here, like Tony was on life support and then had massive delirium. But I'm also not sleeping well. Like I woke up a few times in the night, woke up disoriented, didn't know where I was. Like I'm in a weird hotel room screaming. Um, Nobody sees that, right? So
right,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The impact on the caregiver, it like we're really invisible
right,
for all intents and purposes, unless we're not doing what we should be doing, right? So when I'm in the stairwell crying, I'm not like there's all kinds of tasks that fall to us even in the hospital that nobody really tells you about. Like nobody comes to brush Tony's teeth, make sure his like his dentures. So brushing his teeth for him is easier. Just take them and do it. But like dental care isn't done. Um, like there is this thing on social media where they're trying to end PJ paralysis because patients in hospitals don't get up and move, right? But who's there and got time to help them get up and move? It's the family and friends who show up. So especially after Tony's had this ostomy and then he's up and trying to walk and he's got a walker, um, I'm the one who shows up. If he's having trouble eating, which he was, because an ostomy throws your whole eating and digestive system off balance. Um, so that, people would joke, I'm bringing him a latte, but he survives for a lot of time in the hospital with the milk that's in a latte. So I show up, get him a latte, that gets him to start going in the morning. I make sure he's got his running shoes on and he's ready to roll. Um, and I get him up and a bit moving around and take him. He can complain about the hospital food and I can take him down to the cafeteria and so I'm making sure that he's eating appropriately. At the best of times, he had a transplant, but he's got quite bad arthritis and chronic pain, and so mornings aren't his friend. So there's a lot of times I get him up and moving in the morning and make sure he's got something to eat and a coffee and his pills, and that stuff is just there for him. But that's the kind of thing you do in the hospital. And then of course, hospital food he likes to complain about, and who doesn't? Um, it always stymies me. I always liked the hospital food from the cafeteria, and it was the same company, but what arrived in the rooms was never quite the
yeah,
same.
there's something about it
But
being, yeah,
yeah,
transported, yes. Yeah,
just that having that care partner or visitors helps patients stay oriented. When is it day? When is it night? What
yes.
day is it? What's going on outside in other people's lives, right? Especially for the case of this time where he had quite extensive delirium. The delirium was bad, and he was still really confused for a long time on the ward. Um, there's no real touch points for people to help them get out of delirium. Hospitals are, you lose all sense of time and space really when you're in there for a long time.
So you've described emotions. You've talked about the stairwell, the middle of the night. I wonder if you could name the emotions that you feel in a situation like this.
Um, I guess panic, fear, like you said about death, and that's part of the baggage that we carry that we're just now it's like when you go through these times, you get through them, and then there's a period of time where you're sort of catatonic afterwards, and then you kind of collapse, and then you start to stand up. And we've had so many hits in a row. We're just starting now to start to talk about what some of these fears are. But like Tony had said, when he was in end stage lung failure and then had his transplant, like there's always that. You're always living with that fear of death, especially prior to the transplant, right? Like he said, he was sure, like he said, I don't know how you did it, knowing you could wake up next to a dead body every morning. It's just stuff that we don't talk about and is kind of glossed over. And yeah, so there's a lot of fear, um, fear, panic. I
And
don't even know
well, you
from,
know what?
from being in the hospital.
Yeah, and the other piece of this is you're battling death. You're trying to do everything within your power to ensure that he stays alive.
Yeah,
And that battle is exhausting, it's frustrating, it's scary, it's aggravating, it's overwhelming,
yeah,
and it can feel awful. And it's sad too.
yeah,
You are sad that you're in this battle to keep someone alive. And the other thing that I think is just this incredible weight, the pressure of trying to keep someone alive
yeah,
is really intense. I'm not sure if there's any other intensity quite like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you put your head down and you do. I mean, that's I think where you lose yourself into the healthcare system. You dance to their tune and you do what's expected. So getting Tony, um, it took him a long time to get referred to transplant. He had a number of physicians say, "There's no way you will ever get a transplant. You're too old." Like he was in his 50s at the time. "You're too old. Like you've had your time," right? It was kind of the ageism thing, which wasn't the case. Once we got to transplant, like it was all kinds of men in their 50s with pulmonary fibrosis is a disease no one knows about, but is massive. Um, so finally got referred to transplant, and then you have to go through this assessment phase, and that took us 6 months, and 3 to 6 months is normal. And so, like I said, we lived rurally, sort of semi-rurally. We lived on a block, but they had big. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We were away from the major centers, so it took us. I had estimated outside of regular GP and specialist appointments that he had for arthritis, etc., just the transplant trips, 51 within 6 months. Trips into town, which was a minimum 40-minute drive in and out. So yeah, there's that. They expect you to do that. Do you think I was really working?
Right, I know. See,
No.
I know that's the other thing they never say.
No.
Like, when can you come? It is, here's when
No.
you come.
Exactly. And you say, "Ready, I ready," and you show up and show that you can do it. And so there's all this masking and pretending that happens on the part of patients and caregivers that we're here, we fit in, we're happy. Um, you
We're
know,
compliant. We're
yeah,
easy to get
yeah,
along with. You'll
yeah,
love us.
exactly.
Right.
And if we don't, especially in transplant, like it's very specialized, right? And they're looking for people who are going to fit into the criteria, not just physically, which Tony did. Like once he got referred and all the assessments from the tests started coming back, it was like smooth sailing. Um, but they still have to do all those tests because it's kind of a joke. Like you have to be um, almost dead but otherwise healthy to get a transplant because the surgery is a big deal, right? Like um, it's hard on your body, and they test your cardiovascular system because I guess when you're doing the surgery, there's high pressures and stuff. Like they have to know what they're dealing with to do the surgery. So all those things are important, but again, they're assuming that that you've got family and resources to do this. Yeah, Whereas in other jurisdictions, like in England, if you're doing the assessment, pre-transplant assessment, it takes 3 days. They admit you to the hospital and they just run all the tests. But in Canada, it's done as an outpatient. And so they do it in stages. So there's the easiest test first. And if you do well there, then you move on to the next battery. And that's why it took 6 months. Plus any surgeries. Tony needed some surgery. So we had to wait to get that surgery done.
So we've got just a couple minutes left. I've
Okay.
got 2 questions left for you.
Okay.
Here's the first one. What helps you cope when you have to navigate all these systems?
Oh, I don't know. I had written that question down and said to Tony, I have to say tomorrow what it is that helps me cope. And he's like, I don't even know. I don't know either. I don't know. I guess it was the same as an answer I had said previously. We put our head down and do something. And I think what I'm trying to do now is get words into the right order so that we can make sense for ourselves of what it is we've been through, but also help other people make sense out of it so that hopefully things will change and we can know that we've somehow helped affect change and make the sailing smoother for somebody coming behind us. I think that's what gives us hope and helps us cope with all of
And we're going to show the diagram that you created in just a minute,
it. Okay.
because here's my last question for you.
Yeah.
So after a particularly difficult situation that you've managed, what would you love to do or love to have that would help you feel better?
I would love to have this whole accident issue. So it was his accident. Then he's had a few surgeries since. I would love to have this written up in such a way that we can present it as a case to our health authorities, that I could put it on my website, that there's some sort of package to leave people with that will help those who have the power and authority to be setting policy and making changes better understand what patients and families are going through, and also for patients and families to know what others went through and maybe learn from our experience and be better prepared. I know we can't ourselves change the system for another family, but you can maybe help them see it better so they can, what would I have done differently, or knowing now what I know now, what would I have done with working? Like, how do you work? How do you get your social networks and helpers in place? That sort of thing.
Okay, so let's take a look at the diagram that you created.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't overthink anything at all.
There was, honestly, when I looked at it, there were a couple things that just from my personal perspective, really touched me.
Yeah.
And that was that you added the caregiving fatigues in there too.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the 17 caregiving stages, which you've listed, but we also have caregiver fatigue. So compassion fatigue, I believe, is an umbrella term. We have to get specific about what wears us out in order to know what is it that needs to be healed. So you've listed the fatigues on there as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious, which draft is this? First draft, third draft, fifth draft?
I would say second. So what I did was I watched your video, and you can see I'm leaning into the screen here to point. You can see questions from video, and I've given the link from the YouTube. So I went through and I sort of made some notes, and I wrote out the systems and the fatigues. And then I thought, what were the steps? If I had to say this hospitalization, what were the steps? And could I list 3 things at each step? Well, I could list 20 at each step. So I listed 3, and then it so I did that quick little jot note planning. Then I did this as a pathway, and then just started adding things in. Yeah.
So that's really impressive that you just took 2 tries. You got it right on the second try.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
And when you saw it, how did you feel?
Um, Pretty good. I think it really even helped me because I've told bits and pieces of the story before, and so it's not the first time I've tried to tell the story. Um, but I started to see where, like, I changed color into green. I started to see where the parts where I felt like I was upset and maybe not available and helping Tony, like the ugly crying and, that sort of thing. I got to see where it fit in and realize, wait a minute, there's so much going on here in our journey. That's why I really like these 17 systems. It gives you a place to start telling that story and putting it into some sort of context so it's not just chaotic anymore.
You know what I love too? You talked about the moments when you were telling the story. And I love that the moments are included in your path where you're the ugly crying in the stairwell.
Yeah.
The room is sterile. Your breath, it's like you've lost your breath.
Yeah.
You've been hit by what this room looks like.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to those moments. And oftentimes we forget to include those moments when we describe a really particularly stressful medical event.
Right. Yeah. It that's the part for the caregiver that even the caregivers gloss over. Like, even to identify myself as a caregiver took way too long to add a judgment to it. Like, there were women at work. I was in a contract work situation, so I was facilitating some job retraining workshops and things for, 4 to 6 weeks at a time, and then there'd be a break and then more. But it was my coworkers who said, "You're a family caregiver." No, I'm not. No, I'm not. So even especially as a spouse, right? I'm just doing what you do as part of the team. You don't really realize until it gets farther down and you've been putting on this mask and just ignoring things and moving forward and doing. And then at some point it starts to dawn on you, this isn't going to stop. This wasn't a short-term thing that I can keep doing. It's not sustainable.
I think there's the process that we have to go through in order to accept a new role in our life.
Yeah.
And that's really what you just described.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to add what should we call this? A diagram? What would you like to call it?
Yeah. Diagram is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to add your diagram to our library. I have 2 that I've created, and I am enjoying doing this, which I never would have thought, but there's something about it where you take the pen to paper and it becomes this visual representation. There's something about it that's quite powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It really, that framework of the systems helps integrate all of the balls that you've got in the air and give you some words to put to this story to help it make more sense, right? Because
Yes.
that pathway now is linear, like the roadway that I drew. It's not just this massive confusion anymore.
And it is helpful if you look at the 17 names and decide, okay, these are the 5 that were part of this situation. And then it helps you understand how the 5 were impacting you. Because oftentimes the only thing that's relating the 5 is you. The
Right,
only one that's putting it all together is you.
right.
And you don't realize how much you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Well, and that's what I say in when I'm talking to other caregivers and patients is our system, even the hospital systems are the same, right? They're so siloed and they don't talk to each other. And even within a hospital, that they seem to work off different databases that don't communicate or share critical information. That was a key part of this thing in the hospital. They couldn't find key information when they needed it, and that resulted in bad outcomes. Um, but we're the ones as patients and care partners who carry our stories from one provider and one clinic within a hospital to another. Um, we connect those dots, and sometimes it's very important to good outcomes physically, right? Like, yeah, it's only us. Like, we have this binder, a patient binder for Tony, and it's not complicated. It's big, but it's got lots of different sections. But, he phoned. I went out to get groceries after his transplant and came back, and there's a note. Had chest pain, called ambulance. He's gone. Um, oh, it was after the transplant, so we had to live, like, we were living across the road from the hospital. So I just threw stuff in the freezer and ran across the road. But he had his binder. So when the ambulance came, he gave them the binder. When I got to emergency, his binder is there. It's got his healthcare summary, a one pager. It's got his medications. It's got the names of his doctors, which they knew because it was the hospital that he just had his transplant surgery in. But I walk in and they're like, "Are you a nurse?" No. So not only was that information there when he needed it at a critical time, but it also bought us some credibility. So that communication piece was kind of handled, right? So
So I have a theory about why we like to keep binders rather than moving to an app. First of all, the healthcare system is a paper system, so it's very impossible. It's impossible for us to move away from a binder. But
yes,
the thing that the binder gives us that we want to hold on to is the credibility. When you show up with a binder, the conversation changes with a physician, with
yep,
a healthcare team. We carry the binder to show I'm serious about this. I know what's going on. I have valuable information that can help you. If
that's right.
we were to take out our phone and just pull up an app, it's not the same impact. The binder impacts and
Yeah,
changes the conversation.
yeah. It's a bit of theater. Well, and they are paper.
It is
Like, I have
theater.
an image when Tony goes into surgery at this hospital in Vancouver. Honestly, there's a 18-inch stack of file folders that go into surgery with him. And like I said we had the anesthesia consult before the last surgery, and I said, and I have a photo and I've put it on social media, like, if there's an emergency, like he's had an emergency while in an operating theater, are you looking through, like, are you stopping to look through this 18-inch stack of file folders to find a key piece of information? Like, why? It makes no sense. But this is why they have trouble finding information, right? Is
Yes.
they're still in this weird.
Yeah. I don't know when they'll ever make the switch away from paper because we still fax orders.
Exactly. And
We- yeah.
the phrase is, it's like, I can't send a fax from where I am. And they're like, well, where are you? And I say, the 21st century.
That's right. I know, but you're right. I know it's so crazy
Yeah.
that you have to have access to a fax machine.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention that I thought was so important that you pulled out is how within a hospital system, there actually are different systems because the emergency room has its own system, ICU has its own system, and then the regular floor has its own system. And
Yeah.
each team has different, it seems to me, I could be wrong, but it seems to me they all have their own protocol and process.
Yeah.
And they're not connected. You have to start over with a new process when you go from ICU to the regular floor.
Yeah.
It's like you're a new patient. You
Yeah.
start over and it's
Yeah.
terribly frustrating.
Yeah.
Terribly
Oh, absolutely. Because I noticed that too in ICU. So Tony's in the ICU after that disaster in the OR. And the ICU physicians at this hospital anyway were awesome. Like, they include the family, like during rounds. It's like you can stand among them and look over their shoulder and they ask you questions, and they want to know more context about the patient. And so I'm looking over the shoulder of the guy. They've got their computer on a wheeled cart that goes from bed to bed. And it's like, this information is wrong. Like, you don't have the correct GP, you don't have our correct address. Like, we fixed all that when it came in through admissions. But they don't they're not synced, or they don't communicate. And it's like, if you don't have even the GP's name right, no wonder you couldn't find that critical information when you needed it, and harm ensues, right? So, yeah.
Okay, Beth, this was
Okay.
fabulous. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank
not
you,
only
Denise.
taking the time to prepare, taking the time to create your great diagram, but also taking the time to spend with me today for the interview, and for your generosity in sharing it. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity, because I know I've told you before, this is so important to us, especially going through the legal aspect. We need to be able to tell our story in a much more clear way about the impacts it's had. So this has been a great opportunity for me too. So thank you.
And just a reminder that we want to hear your stories too. So go to careyearsacademy.com. You'll find all the information, including the questions that I ask, so you can prepare, so you won't be surprised. And then you can sign up to be interviewed by me or our interns. We have interns through the community health program at University of Illinois, and they're all great too. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Beth.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.